Hello and welcome to our Confessions podcast, an audio array of terrible tales from the discerning Radio 2 listeners, presented in a nice downloadable package. This week's concise collection includes a Scottish scandal, a cunning cash contrivance, very good, fiendish fence foray, nice, and a rather ruthless running ruse. Pretty good, that, actually. Who will you forgive? Here it all comes. Having a bit of a furniture moment here. Does everyone have a... basically, the Mother Superior didn't have a seat, for which I apologise, Mother Superior.
Oh, really? Heads could roll on that.
So, but everyone happy now in the seat? Oh,
I'm fine.
Rebecca's gone down a couple of
She's
inches.
gone down. She's very kindly offered to give me the big chair, and she's got the little chair.
Well, she is junior in respect to your
exactly.
position.
Well, yeah, for goodness sake. I'm looking down on her now.
Tonight's tale from Anna. Thank you very much indeed for tonight's confession, Anna. Dear Father Simon and the most learned and exalted brethren, I am asking your forgiveness for a terrible slight I caused my daughter a number of years ago. At the time, she was a sweet and happy child, and was a pleasure to be with, and who brought great happiness to her father and I. However, I feel that the story I'm about to recount may have been the beginning of a very slippery slope to the person she has become today. Every day I drive my daughter to and from school, and 99.99% of the time, not a word is spoken on our 30-minute journey. Been there. There'll be a number of people go, yep, I got one of those. I've tried to engage her in polite conversation about the day ahead, or what she's enjoyed during the day, but to no avail. If I get a grunt, I rush into work and exclaim to the whole office the immortal words, "She spoke! She actually spoke!" I think that I should explain how and why she has become this blob in the passenger seat. This is going down very well, Anna, I'm sure. A number of years ago, when my daughter, Ellie, was about 10, we went on a trip to Scotland with her father and her brother, who was 2 years older than Ellie and not quite so gullible. We had a merry old time in the rain, enjoying the scenery and sampling the hospitality. One day we decided to go up a mountain in a cable car. I can't remember which one because they all looked the same to me. Halfway up the mountain, Ellie asked me what a haggis was. Obviously, I had lots of good intentions of explaining the delights of a sheep's stomach and all its quite revolting contents to her, but I was keen on not putting her off sampling such a delight later that evening. I decided to protect her from the horrors of the contents of a haggis, and instead told her the following, that a haggis is a small furry creature that lives on the mountains. Ellie asked me why we couldn't see any, therefore, from where we were, and I explained that a haggis had 2 legs longer than the other, and therefore could only run around a mountain one way. Imagine the driver's side legs being longer than the passenger side legs, rather than the front legs being longer than the back legs. I went on to explain that this unfortunately meant once a haggis had left its burrow, it could not turn round and return to its home, but had to run all the way round the mountain to get back. This meant that a great many haggises died before returning to their burrow, mainly from exhaustion, and hence there are very few haggises left in Scotland. So the haggis that are eaten on Burns Night, I said, are the poor unfortunate ones that had attempted to turn round and had then rolled down the mountain to their doom. Well, sweet and adorable Ellie seemed to accept this explanation, and we continued on the rest of our holiday, eventually returning home and back to normal family life. Shortly afterwards, Ellie started secondary school and was the only one of her friends to go to a new school. She was therefore very nervous and keen to make a good impression on all her new school friends. She wanted to fit in and not stand out from the crowd. Everything seemed to be going very well until one day she returned home in a terrible state. When I finally managed to find out what had happened, obviously fearing name-calling or playground fights, that kind of thing, Ellie told me that during a lesson with a new teacher and some new friends, the teacher, who was from Scotland, asked if anyone knew what a haggis was. Ellie, who had been keen to impress her classmates, stood up and told them the sorry tale that I had told her in the cable car a few weeks before. Oh dear. Apparently, the laughter could be heard right around the school, and Ellie was known as Haggis for quite a few years. She claims that my cruelty has scarred her for life, and so, Father Simon, I want to ask forgiveness from the teachers and fellow pupils who suffered aching sides and bruises when they fell off their chairs laughing, but mainly from Ellie, who has held my little joke against me for the last 7 years, and has... This is such a true story, and has never really lived it down. I hope that hearing this story on the radio might actually cause her to crack a smile on our journey home, and that the collective will find it in their hearts to grant me forgiveness. Yours longingly, Anna. With a school-run story. I would like to have school-run confessions, and how parents talk to children and try and get something going. Anyway, we're back onto that very creative area of parents lying to children, which is something I know Brother Matthew feels very strongly about. What do you think,
Well,
Sister
I
Rebecca?
mean, sometimes maybe it's okay to lie to children if you have a reason. I can't work out why she did it in this case. Is it because she wanted to protect Ellie from, the horror
Well, in
of what
theory,
a
it was
haggis
because she
really
wanted
is?
her to try some haggis later on and she'd be upset about it being a sheep's stomach.
Okay,
but-
so she was kind of trying to protect her, I suppose. I'm just trying to work out a motivation for this tale.
Laughing, I
and,
think, having a laugh.
laughing at her, exactly, and exploiting her gullibility. And the fact that she'd gained a nickname out of a lifelong nickname is terrible. So I mean, I sort of don't think there was enough of a motivation, really. I think she should have just... And also, Ellie should have known that evolutionarily that haggis is not going to survive very long, is it?
Evolutionarily.
I mean, in a Darwinian sense,
Yes.
that haggis probably wouldn't be around still. It'd be would have gone the way of the dodo. But anyway, apart from that, I think it was a bit cruel. So sorry, Anna, I can't forgive you.
Mother Superior.
Well, Ellie, I have sympathy with you because as kids we always used to go up to the Lake District for our holidays and we used to see lots of sheep on all the mountains that you get up there. And my father told us exactly the same story. He told us that all the sheep had two legs shorter than the other two so that they could stay on the mountains. And I believed it, but it didn't really do me any harm. I'm not damaged and I never stopped
Well, you're a
talking.
vegetarian.
Yeah, well...
I'm not saying that means damaged. I'm just saying you
no,
don't eat sheep.
I just don't think it actually made any difference to me. I never stopped talking to them.
Talking to sheep?
No, stopped talking to my mother or father. I wasn't quiet in the car as a consequence. So I don't know if this. I mean, I think we just thought it was our dad being stupid, which he probably was. It was funny. So I actually think that I'm going to not forgive you.
Not forgive, okay.
Because I think that you obviously didn't explain it in the humorous way it should have been, and that's it.
Thanks.
There we are.
Brother Matthew.
This is the flip side, isn't it, to lying to your kids, which normally I'm obviously highly in favour of. Nothing wrong with lying to your kids. However, the fact that she ends up with the nickname Haggis, not the most attractive of nicknames to be known as throughout your school years, really. And the other thing is that... Go on.
Well, no, I have a friend whose nickname is Haggis, and we shorten it to Hag, which is even worse, especially as she gets older.
That was very good of you to shorten it to Hag. Well done, you.
I like that. That's good.
But I think it's time that parents fought back again, because I get this all the time on the school run of nothing coming back at all. Where you try and make conversation and nothing comes back.
How is your day?
And I've
Fine.
had enough.
Yes.
I've had enough. So for that, I am going to forgive, because frankly, she's got it coming for not making conversation in the car or Jack when we're walking to school. Why am I not getting anything coming back?
Yes.
I'm doing all the legwork, getting nothing back. So you're forgiven.
And here comes a drive time confession. You can send yours via the website or to confessions@bbc.co.uk. This one from Angie. Thank you. Dear Father Simon and the Enlightening Group, I am still not sure that this is a good idea, as assorted members of the family hear the show at various times, but we'll see. In our family, there are 5 of us. Me, my much older brother Jeff, and a slightly younger brother, Gareth. Then there's Mum and Dad. We grew up in Cumbria, but are now spread out around different parts of the UK. Being the oldest, Jeff always got special treatment, always got the attention, and as he was rather good at cricket, always cut quite a dash. First around our school, and then at regional level. Gareth and I were slightly interested in how he was getting on, but after a few compulsory visits to watch his interminable matches, boy was I cured of ever wanting to watch cricket ever again. I mean, well done and all that, but why does it have to take so long? Anyway, I digress. Why does it have to take so long, man?
5 days and it can end in a draw. What a
That's the one.
sport!
But everyone loved Jeff, even if he did dress in dungarees. That's my favourite line, actually, of tonight's programme. Everyone loved Jeff, even if he did dress in dungarees, which he did occasionally when Dex's Midnight Runners said that he could. Ah, the memories of 1982. There you go.
Well, the dungarees without anything underneath. Do you remember they used to wear them?
Did you ever wear
bare-
dungarees? I mean, obviously with something.
I did.
Did you?
I actually dress my children in dungarees now.
I love dungarees. They were very comfortable and used to wear shorts, dungaree shorts as well. They were particularly attractive.
Really? Getting slightly carried away. Anyway, so back... I'm sure dungaree confessions, there'll be plenty of those. Anyway, I've lost my place. When Dex's Midnight Runners said he could. I remember thinking he looked a fool back then, and having found the photos again recently, I can see that I was right. But he... Oh, sorry about that, Rebecca. But he swanned around with the stubble and a Kevin Rowland swagger, considering himself a young soul rebel, even though we all knew he was going to be an estate agent, which he now is. He tended to be rather dismissive of his younger brother and sister, i.e. me, and assumed that we'd all do stuff for him. He'd leave us notes asking us to tell John in the village I'm away next weekend, or tell Mum I need to sleep in. Can you do my jobs, please? You get the picture. The jobs were the tasks around the house that we had to do every Saturday morning before anything else. Shopping, car cleaning, hoovering, that kind of thing. And increasingly it would be just me and Gareth doing the work and not Jeff. He said he'd pay us in exchange for jobs, but he usually forgot. Anyway, Jeff went off to study at college, a less than glorious one, it has to be said, with a reputation, so we heard, for sit-ins, radical politics and rubbish degrees that were barely worth the paper they were printed on. But as any brothers and sisters who have been left behind will tell you, it's quite a sobering moment for everybody when the oldest sibling leaves. Quieter house, emptier house, tearful mother, that kind of thing. Gareth and I missed him too, but we got used to it. He'd come back once a term for clothes washing and feeding up, and this is where the subject of Christmas started. Jeff asked if I'd sort out his presents for Mum, Dad and Gareth, and he'd settle up with me later, so I did. That year I bought presents from me and from Jeff. I'd tell him how much he owed me, and then he'd cough up. He'd take a lot of badgering, but he paid in the end. He clearly valued this present buyer in the family. After all, you know their taste better than I do, he'd say every year, and every year I obliged. It spread to birthdays too. I'd buy the gift and he would pay me. After 3 years, he left college and moved down south, and the same operation carried on. You may find this a bit odd, but it's just what happened in our family. Over the years, I've bought for him hundreds of gifts. Perfume, toys, clothes, books, cassettes, videos, flowers, chocolates, wine, and on one memorable occasion, a stick insect. But that's another confession which Gareth will have to offer one day soon. This particular Christmas, i.e. the one just gone, I bought the family on behalf of Jeff, still struggling with his estate agent chain, a magazine subscription, a cashmere jumper, a toolkit, and the Jamie Oliver book. I emailed Mike the cost, and he transferred the money. So now to my confession. Ever since this began many, many, many years ago now, I have been swindling my brother. I have never asked him to pay the actual price. I've always added whatever I thought I could get away with. It started with 20%, but I got braver and sometimes it was 50%. On at least 3 occasions it was more than 100%. Wow. Quite how this businessman couldn't work out that he was paying over the odds for basic goods was beyond me. Originally I saw it as my commission for the work done, but it became a game to see how much I could get away with. My record was getting him to pay £40 for a selection box of chocolates, which had cost me £2.99.
Wow. Oh, well done.
Can you imagine that?
Excellent.
Anyway, this Christmas, says Angie, I started to feel a little guilty. He might be a lazy shopper, but maybe it's gone far enough. So I'm sending this to you, Father Simon, and making a donation to a local charity, hoping that Jeff will see the funny side and the collective will forgive me, even if his staff might demand to see the photos of him pretending to be one of the Celtic Soul Brothers. He can still touraya with the best of them, just in case you're interested. Angie, thank you very much indeed. Lots of excellent detail. I like the dungarees, but anyway, it's a present-buying scam, and she's clearly feeling just a little bit guilty, but maybe it's capitalism in action. What do you think,
Well,
Sister
I did
Rebecca?
think it was a bit odd that Angie continually bought both brothers presents for them, especially Jeff's presents, but now it's become clear why. Jeff wasn't particularly observant, was he? Either that or he had far too much money and therefore, you know, deserves his fate, really, and was clearly very lazy.
A selection box for 40 quid?
I mean, that is ridiculous. As Matt would probably say, he's obviously thick. So, Angie, I think in that light, you're completely forgiven.
All right, OK. Mother Superior, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm the middle child of an older brother and a younger brother, and it's true, you do feel a bit left out, and you do sort of, you feel a bit, I don't know what the word is really. You feel as if you are the odd one out, and you feel that often the attention is given to the oldest one in particular. That was certainly true in my family. But I really don't think that you should have charged him 40 quid for a £2.99 box of chocolates. And the fact that he didn't really realise that you were doing this doesn't really make it any better. I would have thought that if you'd have, you know, that you come to a point where you think, well, over the years, I've stolen £500 from him. I should fess up and I should give it back to him, or maybe he'll see the funny side and maybe he won't want it. But I do think you shouldn't be forgiven, because I think it was a bit naughty once, possibly, but over over several years, it's not really great, I don't think. Not forgiven.
Many decades, actually. So it's all down to, here's the casting vote from Brother Matthew.
Outstanding. 40 quid for a box of chocks. Well done. Well done indeed. To be honest, I'd happily pay someone to buy presents for me. It's the most soul-destroying thing. Particularly it's the...
Yeah, but you do have someone. It's your wife, and you don't pay her.
Yeah, well, no, but it's the whole, oh no, what they're going to think about this present. What's this present saying about them? What's it saying about me? I can't be bothered, please. I'll happily overpay for someone to buy presents for me, because frankly, it gets me out of all that hassle. But
this is why you love Christmas so much. It's because you don't have to do any of the hard work.
Anything. I just get the day. Hooray! But the thing that I love about this is that they all knew he was going to be an estate agent from a very young age. How does that work exactly? How does someone manifest themselves as an estate agent from the age of 10? That kind of haircut, you're thinking. Oh, right, fair enough. Right, yes, indeed.
Is there an estate agent haircut? Really?
Wow.
So are you forgiving?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to forgive, just for the 40 quid for the box of chocks. Well done.
Dear Simon and the Forgiving Few, this is from Phil. Thank you, Phil, for tonight's epistle. My older brother Craig and I would regularly do all kinds of activities together, one of which was hill walking in Scotland, which is where we lived at the time of this confession. We were real country lads and felt fully conversant with the way that rural affairs and such like really worked. We'd watch Countryfile out of choice. The only real difference between us really was that my older brother was deeply into sporty cars and I was a motorbike fiend. Each week you could find him washing I think washing is the usual pronunciation. Washing and waxing his pride and joy to an ultra-high spec of presentation, that being a brand new Opel Manta 2-door sports hatchback in black with Recaro seats. He wouldn't let me drive no matter how much I asked. In truth, he was right not to let me. One weekend in 1983, we arranged a hill walk on one of the mountains surrounding Loch Lomond. We set off all kitted out and prepared for whatever the famed weather could throw at us, along with Craig's trusty companion, Dolly, his 4-year-old Springer Spaniel. When we were about 2,000 feet up the mountain, we made for a stile that was marked on the Ordnance Survey map. This would be our crossing point into the next section of the climb. When we arrived at the stile, we discovered it broken into many bits, surrounded by a fence of the electrified variety, or an electric fence to make it easy. The kind that farmers use to keep their sheep from wandering too far. I informed him that being this far up a mountain, the chances of the fence actually being live was pretty remote, especially as we couldn't see any sheep anywhere, so I decided to try the fence by lightly touching it. By the way, don't try any of this at home, should you have a sheep electrified fence in your house. So I decided to try the fence by lightly touching it. Not a tingle was felt. We both knew that these type of fences sent a bolt of current rather than them being on all the time, so I grasped the fence for a full 5 seconds. Not a thing. There you go, I said, it's not even switched on. Well, you go first, said my brother, who was clearly not convinced by my test. I very tentatively straddled the fence with more than a little apprehension. Fortunately without incident. Upon reaching the other side, I called Dolly the dog, and she leapt over easily. Now it was my brother's turn. It was at this point that I noticed one of those electrical terminals which connected the fence was actually hanging loose. I don't really know what came over me, but it felt like the devil was whispering into my ear and urging me to give my brother just a little payback for some of the tricks that he's played on me over the years. I waited until he was fully astride the fence. With the terminal firmly held in one hand, I made contact. For a moment there was nothing. Then the contorted expression of shock and pain and panic on his face as the currents pulsed through his body, quickly followed by the loudest yell I've ever heard. He fell over to the other side and rolled on the ground. He was in agony. He looked over at my gloved hand holding the terminal to see me having my own convulsions, but mine were of uncontrollable laughter. Instant rage welled in his eyes, and I knew I was in deep trouble. It was time to leg it, and quickly at that I got a sprint on, and as I ran past him I shouted, "Can I smell burning?" Nice, huh? What followed was something from a Benny Hill sketch. 2 blokes racing down a mountain in quick time, with the other one at the rear furiously shaking his fists and shouting all kinds of threats. In fact, all that was missing was the music. Right. My brother was catching me fast, as I was slightly incapacitated by not being able to stop laughing. I thought he was about to tackle me when suddenly I heard a cry. Oh, the music stopped. There you go. I thought there was going to be a nice musical piece of punctuation. I looked round and I saw Craig's foot caught in a rabbit burrow. He'd twisted it, and he'd twisted it badly. I knew it was bad from the extra yelp that my brother had shouted. I went over to help him, realising quickly that he wouldn't be walking on the injured foot for a while and that I would have to carry him off the mountain. With each 100 feet that we descended, the swelling in his ankle appeared to double in size. I was getting genuinely concerned, and my laughter subsided to just an occasional giggle. When I eventually got him back to ground level, the enormity of his plight suddenly dawned on him. He wouldn't be able to drive his beloved car. He would have to let me, the delinquent biker, behind the wheel and drive him to hospital. Something which he always said would never happen as long as he had breath in his lungs. I was quietly smirking to myself as I knew he had no choice, and that at last I was going to be able to put the car through its paces, all in the name of an emergency. With my poor brother secured in the passenger seat and me finally at the wheel, I revved up the beast and sped off. Excuse me. Father Simon, I'm sure that at that point I saw a tear in his eye. Couldn't be sure if it was the pain in his ankle, his groin, or from the pain of his pride and joy being put in the hands of an incompetent car driver. Craig recovered after a few weeks' rest. Torn ligaments and muscles was the diagnosis, and no doubt some mental trauma from my driving. The Opel Manta two-door hatchback, however, needed a week's stay in the garage for the scratched paintwork to be touched up. And all because I electrocuted his how's your father. So, Father Simon, I ask forgiveness for damaging my brother in an inconvenient way, and for his subsequently injured ankle, and for making him put up with my terrible driving. I want you to know that Craig is in reality the best brother anyone could wish for, so forgiveness from you and the collective would be a great help to my conscience, my soul, and my guilt. It's Phil who wants forgiveness for waiting for the perfect moment and then making the current flow. What do you say, Sister
Well,
Rebecca?
you could say this was just hijinks between brothers, happens all the time. But, I mean, to do that thing in particular could have caused his brother long-term
It's
damage.
only a
He could have
small pulse.
ruined his life
It's a small
forever.
small pulse of electricity.
Yeah, but he didn't know how strong it was going to be, and
it's just-
and then he almost broke his leg falling in a rabbit hole. I mean, ridiculous. And then it turns out that he scratched the car, so his brother had good reason never to let him drive the car. So I think for all these reasons, Phil, you're obviously quite feckless, and Greg was absolutely right
Feckless?
not to let you anywhere near his pride and joy in both senses. And so you're not forgiven.
Oh, well done.
His pride and joy. That's what it should have been called, really. Mother Superior, I'm not sure if you can speak, actually, but what do you say?
That's one of the funniest confessions I've ever heard. Do excuse that little squeak there. Gosh, well, I can imagine that I would be, if someone had electrocuted my nether regions, followed by getting my foot caught in a rabbit thing, and then someone driving my pride and joy home, I would have been pretty hacked off. And my first instinct is to say, you're not forgiven, but actually you made me laugh so much that I am going to forgive you. Great confession.
What do you think then, Brother Matthew?
I think this is the reason why this story is great is because it wasn't planned in any way. He couldn't possibly have known that the terminal was going to be on the other side of this fence. And so when life throws you these opportunities, you're on the other side of an electrified fence. You're able to plug it in just as your brother's how's your father getting over his fence. If you've got that opportunity, grasp it with both hands. Superb stuff. As it were, with
It's
your pride.
It's a minefield.
With
really,
your
this, isn't it?
pride and
Yes.
joy. Oh, superb. Definitely forgiven.
Simon, the only thing better than a water-filled flugelhorn, by the way, is a doorbell sound effect used during a confession. Hint, hint, from Stuart, waiting for the snow in Stoke.
It's there.
Well, it is. I'm not sure if I can crowbar it in, but let me see. Let me see if I can. Tonight's confession is from Tom. Tom, thank you very much indeed, dear Father Simon, and the Evangelical Enigma. Back in the early 1990s, when I was a fit young rugby playing lad, myself and my flatmate Aaron were invited down to Swanage to stay with our friend Chris. The occasion was to partake in the infamous Swanage Run, a pub crawl from the top of the town to the seafront via a dozen or so of the local taverns. A simple quest, enlivened by the proclamation of a winner being the last person to answer the inevitable call of nature that follows such pursuits. Have we set the picture?
We have, thank
Thank
you.
you. Upon arriving at the picturesque seaside town, Aaron spotted several posters advertising the Swanage Run. Unfortunately, this was an entirely athletic event, which had actually occurred the previous week. Being somewhat attuned to his mental weakness, Chris and I hatched a plan. The morning after the bladder-testing Swanage Run, and with aching and fuzzy minds, we persuaded Adam that we were entered as a team into the actual Swanage Run, as advertised on the poster. Chris's septuagenarian father was coaxed into providing authentication of the event, and even some early morning physiotherapy for the team. After collecting £14 entry money from Aaron, he was driven to a remote roadside spot some distance from Swanage, close to Corfe Castle. As we drove off with his £14 entry money, leaving him lonely on a roadside log, drinking water in the baking summer sun, we consoled ourselves with the fact that a run may do him some good. We had convinced him that we would start the race from the seafront, Chris undertaking the first leg, with myself taking the second, leaving Aaron to claim the victorious final leg, and thus having the longest recovery time. In fact, as we played pool in a local pub and got a couple of rounds in with his £14, we idly wondered how long we should leave him, particularly as the day was now turning into a real scorcher. After about an hour, we jumped into Chris's pickup truck to enact the next part of the plan. Driving to about a quarter of a mile from our hapless victim, Chris covered himself in water and attempted to look like a man who'd just run 4 miles. I jumped out of the truck and set off running, acting as exhausted as possible. As a further thought, a baton was produced, although actually it was a 5-foot length of scaffolding tube, somewhat heavier and more unwieldy than a traditional baton. Hey, that's the kind of thing you wouldn't drop if you're in the 4x400. Anyway, it's a nice idea. The truck then raced ahead with shouts of, "Get ready! We're in the lead! It's all up to you! Don't look back!" As I appeared, sweating with sparkling mineral water, looking exhausted after my 4-mile, which was actually 200-yard run. Up jumped Aaron, who took the baton, no easy task, and literally raced off like a man possessed up the steep hills of Corfe. Actually, I'll tell you what we need.
Oh, no, I know what's
We
going
need this. There he goes. Look at him with his 5-foot baton. Anyway, that's quite enough of that. Into the stiflingly still hot air of the perfect summer's morning. We drove past him, waving and shouting encouragement, hurry up, before we stopped about a mile away, using the last of the £14 to buy ice creams. We heartily cheered him, running past us, breathing heavily and sweating like a racehorse, with the 5-foot length of scaffolding in his hands. "Go on!" we screeched, "keep going!" Only barely able to suppress our laughter. After finishing our ice creams, we took a leisurely 2-mile drive to a pub overlooking the finish line. After about 20 minutes idly sunbathing, a large, red-sweating man appeared over the horizon, moving at a good pace for someone suffering the after-effects of a prolonged pub crawl and carrying a 5-foot length of scaffolding tube on a hot summer's day. He came towards us. By now, a small flicker of guilt had risen amongst us, especially as he looked on the verge of requiring medical attention. "Stop! This is the finish line!" we all cried at him. "Ha! You can't fool me!" he blurted as he ran past. "The finish is on the seafront." And off he went down the hill at an alarming pace. By now genuinely concerned, we chased after him just in time to see him emerge from the official seafront finish, or rather a marquee for antique collectors, as it actually was. He was by now in a terrible state after his 4-mile hilly run in searing temperatures, and also looked a little angry. We relieved him of the scaffold tube and escorted him back to the real finish line, the beer garden, where we carefully explained that actually we'd been disqualified due to him not stopping at the right place and had therefore not won the race after all. He apologised profusely, collapsed onto the grass and wasn't able to speak for the next 20 minutes. I have to tell you, Father Simon, our secret has remained untold until now. He still thinks the fact that we didn't win was his fault. I now feel able to confess to this heinous act 20 years later. I seek absolution not from Aaron, who was merely displaying his own gullibility, but to the genteel folk of Swanage, whose Sunday morning antiques fair was disrupted by a stinking, sweating, exhausted runner barging through the crowds with the 5-foot pole in search of glory and a medal. Which he didn't get, says Tom. Tom, thank you very much indeed. It's an interesting prank. Poor old
Aaron
with his big 5-foot pole.
Yeah, him.
Interesting idea. What do you think?
I think that was an incredibly elaborate gag, but it was hilarious. I mean, I do feel sorry for Aaron with his hangover.
Hang on, who's that? Oh, No, it's just...
That didn't really work for me.
No,
no,
me neither.
So yeah, Aaron with his hangover, poor man in the searing heat. But it was funny, and I think Aaron will find it funny if he's listening to this now. So I completely forgive you, Tom.
What do you think, Mother Superior?
Well, I think Aaron must have been a bit daft to have seen this massive pole and to have assumed it was quite normal to run with a 5-foot piece of pole. I mean, why didn't twig at that point that something was up? I'm not sure. Maybe he wasn't that bright. But anyway...
he was just thick. You were going with Brother Matthew.
Yeah, just thick. Very, very thick. Anyway, I don't think it was particularly nasty. I think it was a great prank. I think it was funny. No one died. So I'm going to forgive you.
I don't think anyone died. Anyway, Matt, what do you
Pretty
think
sure
of
of that.
Yes.
It's the pole that makes it genius, isn't it? Is the fact that this guy's carrying a 5-foot pole and thinking that that's normal, and then finishing the race in the antique marquee. Lovely. Yes, this is where the race definitely finishes. Where all these people are pouring.
Well, you can imagine his battle might have got him into a lot of trouble.
Well, you'd have thought. I'm definitely going to forgive for this one because, as Joe, a member of our team, said before I came in, he said you're going to really enjoy this one because at the end of it you're going to think I'd have done exactly the same, and I think exactly the same as that. Yes, I'd love to have got in on this, so definitely forgiven.
That was that. Another week of Confessions is done. Who did you forgive? If you're harbouring guilt from years gone by, you can email your confession at any time to confessions@bbc.co.uk, or you can go to the website bbc.co.uk/radio2. Another podcast for you next Friday. Have a sin-free week. And a lovely weekend.